President Trump continues an aggressive agenda of executive orders here at home, but a series of federal judges have blocked some of them.
Today, a judge ordered the administration unfreeze funding for medical research grants. Another held a hearing on whether the buyout for federal workers is even legal. Judges have blocked several of President Trump's major initiatives, but the president insists the scams are coming from within government.
We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse.
I've never seen so many temporary restraining orders issued in such a short period of time against the U.S. government.
Political observers say the White House will appeal any legal setbacks all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Hey guys, and welcome. Adam is here. And if you think Trump is still the all-powerful figure he pretends to be, this thing will change your mind completely. A federal judge just handed Trump one of the most devastating losses of his presidency, not by impeaching him, not by removing him from office, but by cutting away a massive piece of his power.
A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from cutting hundreds of millions of dollars for public health programs in Illinois and 3 other states run by Democrats. In granting those states a restraining order, Judge Manish Shah said the cuts appeared to be made for, quote, arbitrary, capricious, or unconstitutional reasons. An analysis by the Sun-Times indicates the cuts amount to around $29 million here in Illinois and mostly targeted HIV prevention and family planning programs. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul led the lawsuit along with his counterparts in Colorado, Minnesota, and California, and in a statement said the state will keep fighting against what he called unlawful directives intended to force the state to go along with the White House's immigration policies.
Trump tried to weaponize federal health funding to punish blue states that refused to help with his deportation agenda. And a judge just told him absolutely not. This ruling doesn't just block one policy, it dismantles Trump's entire strategy of using money as a weapon.
Federal judge just blocked the Trump administration's freeze on federal funding. It was supposed to take effect in the last hour, but now it won't start until next Monday, February 3rd. The White House ordered federal agencies to suspend any grants that conflict with President Trump's executive orders, but didn't clarify what those programs are. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt was asked about it in her White House briefing, and she made clear programs that directly benefit individuals will not be impacted by this freeze.
This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration.
And it's happening at the worst possible moment for a president who's already watching his poll numbers crater and his administration fall into chaos. Let's start with what Trump was actually trying to do, because the audacity of this power grab is staggering. Trump came back into office with a clear plan. He wanted maximum leverage over states, especially Democratic-led states that refused to cooperate with his immigration crackdown.
The ruling has 2 effects. One, the DOJ, Justice Department, cannot claw back millions in law enforcement grant money from sanctuary cities that violate a statute known as 1371, which says cities cannot limit or prohibit local police from sharing information with federal authorities about illegal immigrants accused of or convicted of crimes. Now, the Obama administration in 2016 required cities comply with 1373 as a condition of receiving law enforcement grant money. Now, when President Trump took office, he tried to enforce that through an executive order. 2 California counties sued, and last night, federal judge William Orrick said the counties have demonstrated that the executive order has caused and will cause them constitutional injuries by violating the separation of powers doctrine and depriving them of their 10th and 5th Amendment rights of due process and states' rights. However, some sheriffs oppose sanctuary policies.
His tool of choice? Federal funding. States depend on Washington for billions of dollars every year. Health programs, infrastructure, education, all the things citizens expect their governments to provide. Trump figured he could use that money as a club. Cooperate with ICE. Help us deport immigrants. Or we'll cut your funding. Simple extortion dressed up as policy. The specific target this time was public health grants. Hundreds of millions of dollars that Congress appropriated for programs dealing with disease outbreaks, maternal health, drug addiction, critical services that states literally cannot function without. Trump's Department of Health and Human Services issued a new rule. It said these health grants would now come with conditions. If states want the money, they have to cooperate with administration priorities, including immigration enforcement. If they don't help with deportations, HHS can cut them off. Think about what that means. Money intended to fight opioid addiction and track infectious diseases would now be contingent on states helping ICE round up undocumented immigrants, two completely unrelated policy areas, welded together by presidential decree. Colorado and several other blue states looked at this rule and immediately sued. Their argument was straightforward and powerful. Congress controls the power of the purse, not the president. Congress appropriated this money specifically for public health programs. They didn't say, and by the way, the president can withhold it to force immigration compliance. Trump doesn't get to rewrite congressional spending decisions just because he wants to punish states that oppose him. That's not how the Constitution works. The case landed in federal court, and the judge just handed down a ruling that absolutely destroys Trump's strategy. The judge granted a preliminary injunction blocking Trump's rule, finding that the administration is likely violating the Constitution. The ruling specifically cites the spending clause and separation of powers. The judge said Trump is trying to unilaterally rewrite conditions Congress never approved, and that's illegal. The ruling protects hundreds of millions in health funding while the case proceeds, and it sends an unmistakable message. You cannot weaponize federal money this way. Now let's talk about why this matters so much beyond just this one program. This ruling cuts at the heart of Trump's entire governing philosophy. Trump believes power means being able to force people to do what you want, and his favorite mechanism for forcing people is financial pressure. Threaten to cut funding. Make it so painful to resist that states have to comply. It's the same playbook he's tried with infrastructure money, with education grants, with disaster relief. Always the same approach. Do what I say or lose your money. But this ruling says that approach is unconstitutional when it comes to funds Congress already appropriated for specific purposes. The president doesn't get to add new conditions Congress never approved. He doesn't get to connect unrelated policy areas just to punish his political enemies. He executes the spending decisions Congress makes. He doesn't get to rewrite them. This is a massive limitation on presidential power. If Trump could do this, if he could take any federal funding and threaten to cut it unless states cooperate with his agenda, he'd essentially have dictatorial control over state governments. He could force blue states to abandon sanctuary policies. He could force them to adopt his education priorities. He could force them to change their environmental regulations, all by holding hostage money they need to function. That's not federalism. That's not how the system is supposed to work. And the judge just drew a bright line and said, you cannot cross this line. The political implications are enormous, and they're hitting Trump at the worst possible time. His poll numbers are already in free fall. He's fighting with Congress over immigration funding. His own Department of Homeland Security is facing a potential shutdown, and now courts are systematically dismantling his ability to pressure states. Every time this happens, every time a court blocks one of Trump's power plays, his strongman image takes another hit. Because strong men don't constantly get overruled by judges. Strong men don't have to beg. Strong men don't watch their threats become empty. Blue state governors are watching this ruling and realizing something crucial. They don't have to cave to Trump. They can resist, they can sue, and they can win. That emboldens every Democratic-led state to maintain sanctuary policies, to refuse ICE cooperation, to stand up to federal pressure. Trump's whole strategy of using fear as a weapon falls apart when states realize the fear is unfounded. What's he actually going to do? Cut their funding illegally? Courts will block it. Send in federal agents? That creates a massive political crisis. Make speeches attacking them. They don't care. Trump is running out of options. Inside the White House, reports suggest genuine alarm. Not just about this ruling, but about the pattern it represents. Courts are blocking Trump's most aggressive moves one after another. Lower courts are pushing back. Even when the Supreme Court gives him theoretical wins on issues like immunity, district courts are cutting away his practical ability to govern. Each ruling takes another tool out of his toolbox. And with less than 3 years left in his term, possibly less if midterms flip Congress, Trump is running out of time to accomplish anything substantial. Let's talk specifically about what this means for Trump's immigration agenda, because that's what this fight was really about. Trump wants mass deportations. He wants states to help. But ICE doesn't have enough agents to be everywhere. They need local police cooperation. They need governors providing resources. They need state and local officials willing to participate in enforcement operations. And blue states are refusing. They have sanctuary laws. They limit cooperation with ICE. They make it harder for Trump to find and deport people. Trump's solution was to force them through financial pressure. Cut health funding, cut education funding, cut infrastructure money, make it so painful to resist that states have to give in. But now courts are saying that's illegal. So what's Trump's backup plan? There isn't one. He can ask Congress for legislation, but Democrats control part of Congress and won't help him. He can issue executive orders, but courts keep blocking those. He can make speeches and post on social media, but that doesn't actually force anyone to do anything. Trump is discovering that without the ability to punish states, his enforcement strategy collapses. This ruling also creates a template for more resistance. Every blue state that faces a Trump funding threat can now point to this decision and say, "See, courts have already ruled this is illegal. Try to cut our money and we'll sue and we'll win." That precedent spreads. It protects education funding, infrastructure funding, disaster relief, any federal money Trump might try to weaponize. One ruling in one case can have ripple effects across dozens of policy areas. The timing is particularly brutal for Trump because midterms are approaching. If Democrats take the House in November, his last 2 years become purely defensive, no new legislation, just investigations and subpoenas. So realistically, Trump has maybe 9 months to accomplish his agenda before facing a hostile Congress, and courts are eating into even that limited window by blocking his power plays. Every week spent fighting legal battles is a week not implementing policy. Every tool courts take away is one less way to advance his goals. Legal analysts are pointing out that this ruling isn't an outlier. It's part of a consistent pattern of courts rejecting Trump's attempts to expand executive power. He gets immunity for official acts from the Supreme Court, but that's about prosecution after he leaves office. That's abstract. This ruling is about right now, about whether he can force states to help with deportations today. And the answer is no. That's a practical loss that affects his actual agenda, not just his legal exposure down the road. Trump's whole brand is built on strength, on being tougher than everyone else, on making people do what he wants. But when courts keep blocking him, when states keep winning lawsuits, when his threats lead to nothing, that brand crumbles. He looks less like a strong man and more like a bully who keeps getting punched in the mouth and doesn't know how to fight back. The irony is that Trump thought his second term would be different. He thought he understood the system better. He thought he could push harder without consequences. Instead, he's running into the same institutional resistance, the same constitutional limits, the same courts telling him no. All the constraints he thought he'd escaped are still there, and every time he tries to break through them, he gets slapped down. So what happens next? Trump will appeal this ruling. His Justice Department will fight hard to overturn it. They'll argue that the president needs flexibility to set priorities for federal spending. But here's the problem. The law is pretty clear. Congress appropriates money for specific purposes. The president can't just add new conditions Congress never approved, especially conditions designed to punish political opponents. That's such an obvious abuse of power that even conservative judges might struggle to defend it. The appeal might fail. And if it does, if this ruling stands, Trump loses one of his most powerful weapons. He can't threaten health funding anymore. He can't use that leverage. He has to find another way to force states to cooperate. But what other way? He doesn't have many options left. Courts are blocking his executive orders. Congress won't give him new laws. States are winning in court. Trump is running out of tools. This is what commentators mean when they talk about courts cutting Trump's term. Not literally shortening how long he serves, but cutting down what he can accomplish. If he only has 3 years left and courts are blocking major pieces of his agenda, then effectively his time to reshape the country is being cut. He's got less runway than he thought. Every ruling like this takes another chunk out of his remaining time. For voters, this matters because it shows the system working. Courts are enforcing constitutional limits. They're blocking executive overreach. They're protecting states from federal coercion. That's how the system is supposed to function. And it's happening even with a president who tests every boundary. For Trump supporters, this is frustrating because they elected him to shake things up, to use power aggressively, to get things done. And instead, they're watching him get bogged down in legal fights, watching courts block his initiatives, watching his agenda stall. That's not what they signed up for. For everyone else, this ruling is a relief because it confirms that no president is above the law. There are limits. There are consequences. There are judges willing to say no. Trump can threaten all he wants, but when he actually tries to follow through, courts will stop him. The bottom line is simple. Trump tried to weaponize federal health funding to force blue states into helping with deportations. A federal judge just blocked that move completely. The ruling protects hundreds of millions in health money, limits Trump's ability to use funding as leverage, and sends a message that this kind of political extortion won't be tolerated. Trump is losing tools, losing leverage, losing power. Not because his term is being cut short, but because his ability to use that term effectively is being systematically dismantled. And with less than 3 years left, every ruling like this matters more than the last. Stay tuned because there's more coming.